Welcome back to the Emotional Revolution podcast. Today, I'm joined by MacKenzie Morris, who is my friend, and I'm so excited to introduce her to you today. She's also a business and visibility strategist. And today, we're going to explore the connection between emotional healing and business growth. So, we're going to be diving into her own personal journey, and we're going to get to hear some of her own wisdom from all of it. So, MacKenzie, welcome. I'm excited to have you here today.
Thank you so much. I am so excited also.
Yes. Okay. This is going to be fun. So I know you. So let's share you to my audience. So tell me, just tell me first, what is a business and visibility strategist?
Yeah, so I am someone that works with coaches, course creators, program creators, retreat hosts, service based businesses who are looking to expand their audience outside of their local networks online using digital solutions like lead magnets, email marketing, funnels, paid ads, all of those super fun digital stuff.
Yes, and I get the privilege of working directly with you, and you help me run my business on the back end to make all of this magic happen. So I know just how amazing and beneficial the work you do is. But tell me, how long have you been doing this? Like, yeah, just tell me how long have you been doing this?
Yeah, so this specifically, I have started working one on one with clients for about 3 years now. I have been an entrepreneur for about 15, literally since I was 12. That's when I got my first offer from a company called Davidson Industries. They wanted to work with me. But when I was that young, my parents were like not super stoked to like hand over 10 grand to go and work with this company. So I've always had the entrepreneurial spirit inside of me. And now I just get to do that and help other people step into their highest self and live their entrepreneurial dreams and just help be that facilitator behind the scenes to help make their dreams happen.
Yeah. Why do you think that is? Why do you think some of us have this natural like pull to be our own boss, our entrepreneur?
Oh my gosh, I don't know. I just think it's innately who you are, right? Like there's a lot of things that you are born to be. And I think that being an entrepreneur is something you were born to be. Yes, you can absolutely learn how to become that. And a lot of people just fall into it. But some people just have it in them. And they might not know what that feeling of being an entrepreneur is, or might not be able to identify that entrepreneurial spirit until they happen to fall into it later. But I think that if it's your purpose and it's who you're meant to be, it will always find you.
I think so too. I love that. That's a beautiful description. So I've always been like that, right? I've always been like, how can I create something? How can I do something out of the box? If someone's going this way, how can I go the opposite way and create my own thing? And I think it is just something that is within me. It's very driven. It's just a lot of just my nature. And I know that about you as well. Okay, so you've been on this journey for a really long time. And really, the big purpose of this podcast and what I want to share with others is, and the work I do, right, is really getting into the depth of our emotional journey and also how, when we're not working on ourselves, how that's such a disruptor in our business. So, what have been the biggest challenges for you throughout this process of being an entrepreneur?
Oh my gosh, the thing that I still struggle with today, and a lot of people don't talk about it a lot. They talk about it whenever you're in the early stages, but whenever you're more established, I feel like the conversation about this thing kind of goes away because we're trying to maintain this image of being super successful and professional and having all of our shit together. And I don't subscribe to that, right? Like I am all about being authentic and real and talking about the real things that happen. And one of the things that constantly I am fighting is imposter syndrome. It does not matter what level of business I'm in, how much revenue I am doing. Every time, especially when I'm starting something new, it comes up before I get on stage to speak about a topic, before I go and launch a course or a new resource, or even join a program. I literally joined a new program this morning and I was like, oh my God, who am I to be doing this? Who am I to be dropping this amount of money to do this? But that's just the imposter syndrome talking. If you can't get past that, you are not going to get past the level that you're at, right? You have to step into that highest level.
Yeah, well, has there been a time in your journey that you felt like the imposter syndrome did hold you back?
Oh my gosh, so much. And a lot of the times, whenever that happens, it's really yourself maybe blaming external things, right? Like, okay, I didn't work hard enough, or maybe, um, I don't know. people aren't engaging or they're not trying hard enough in this course or whatever it is. But whenever it really comes down to it, you have to have what you talked about, the radical honesty, and really being honest with yourself and saying, okay, did I really give this my all? Or is there actually something I really could have done? And whenever I had a wedding company and I launched my own design, like I built that out for 2 years. I had this big old launch and everything, and it completely failed, like completely failed, zero sales. Like it was not good. And that was a really hard reality. And to me, I truly thought that I did everything that I knew that I could. And I do still believe that in my heart. And that is the hardest that I've ever tried in my life with things. And with that being said, even whenever you do try, sometimes things just aren't aligned and it's not what you're supposed to be doing. And that's kind of one of the other lessons I've learned from that.
Yeah. Well, what did you do after? So, what did you do after that launch failed?
Oh my gosh. Well, I went on a hiatus because I was hurt. Like, my heart was broken. It truly was. Multiple months prior, I had set up this 27 string of emails to be sent out about this launch. I'd have this whole marketing strategy. Like, I put in the work harder than I'd ever had in my life. And it was the biggest heartbreak. But then after I had launched and there were zero sales, let me go back. There were 4 sales. They were all friends of mine. And to me, I really wanted my cold leads to convert, and they didn't. And what I found during my hiatus was that it was a protection because shortly after that, I lost my manufacturer. So had I had sold 10,000 of my designs, I would have actually been SOL. Um, but I had to take time to recover. Like I shut it down. I was hurt. I shut down. I became a little recluse and I played with my family and I took a break and I had to be really real with myself and decide, what do I want to do? Do I want to continue with this wedding company? Do I want to continue trying to build something brand new like I have been? Do I want to continue doing what I was doing prior to that? Or do I want to go into a completely different stage of my life? And that's what I ended up doing.
And what helped you make that decision, right? Because that's a lot. That's just really surface level. I know a little bit more about what went underneath it. But for you, if you wanted to share, what did you do? What did that really look like? What did that emotional journey look like? Because, like I always say, our business is always going to show us exactly where we need to look and where we need to heal. So, how did that reflect back to you in a way where you could go deeper into your emotional journey and state?
Right. It really came from taking time to sit and really reflect and figure out, okay, what do I actually love doing? And what of those things that I love am I actually doing in the business that is reflecting that? And it really came out that everything in my wedding company I was doing, I almost literally hated all of it. And it made it really hard to excel and do things really, really well if I was not loving what I was doing. So, really, what came from that was I had to sit down and decide, okay, where is my energy best spent and what do I love? And that was helping other people, getting to be creative, getting to be the ideator, getting to help other people in their company. So I decided to let my wedding company go and step fully into the strategist part of my life. And I think that that was something that I was really scared to do because that's really vulnerable. Not only building a business, because I've done that for forever. People know me as the person that builds businesses, right? I can do that in a heartbeat. That is not the hard part. But stepping into that authority and saying that this is who I am, and now I, me, myself, and I am the business, I am the thing, rather than creating this external thing that's selling something to other people, was a way different thing to be doing. And it was a lot more vulnerable for me.
Yeah, and so this really brings back to that space of imposter syndrome. So how did that really like trigger your imposter syndrome as you made this transition?
Oh my gosh, it was so hard. Because then it's like, okay, one, how am I going to do this and offer myself to the world and prove to other people that I know how to do this, that I can help them do that, when I've been really real and vulnerable about my wins and my failures, right? Like people in my network know that I've had failed companies, and newsflash, every successful entrepreneur has had failed companies, tons of them. So I think that puts us in the winner circle. But Also having to realize that all those failures are not failures, but they're lessons that I was intended to learn to help gain the experience and the knowledge that I needed to be really, really successful in what I'm doing now. And learning how to articulate that with the people that I know and my cold leads and all of these things was really, really integral into being able to step into that truest version of myself and stepping into this role of being that strategist and trying to overcome that imposter syndrome.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit more about what this looks like when I have my version of deep emotional work, and it's just a lot of just being honest with yourself, right? You know that. But for you, what was that like? And honestly, take me through a journey of what life was like before you started working on yourself so you can work on your business.
What my life looked like before I got into personal and professional development was I was hustling until I could not hustle anymore. I was burning myself into the ground and I was working in ways that I felt completely isolated. I felt like I didn't have any type of support, I didn't have any type of community, and I was literally on an island by myself. And what really got me into the space of personal and professional development was actually intended to be a joke. I signed up to go to this event by someone in our local community called the Sacred Self Love event. And I really wanted to go and experience like the hippie woo woo stuff. Like, I thought it was going to be a great time. I took a little gummy beforehand. I was ready for whatever was going to happen. If I'm being really, really honest, that was the intention. And, the whole idea was you show up in these sexy PJs and you get to be around a bunch of women. And I didn't know what was going to happen. And then we got to have a boudoir photo shoot. So I'm always down for a photo shoot. I'm always down to like be empowered and confident in my body and all that stuff. So that was the idea. But what actually happened at the event, I was truly not prepared for. It was one of the most defining moments of my life. And the facilitator got down on her hands and knees and she was talking about what she calls sacred rage. And she sat down and it was almost scary. She sat down and started like moving around on the ground with her body, like making these animal sounds and all of this stuff. And then she started screaming. And I think I can talk about it without crying, but it is one of the most transformative moments in my life because of how painful that scream sounded. And she invited the room to do it. And hearing those screams from other women completely changed my life because a lot of times men know how to express their rage and their fear and their hurt and their sorrows and the pain and all of those things. But as women, we like to hold that in a lot. And what we noticed is a lot of women didn't even know how to scream. Like they tried and nothing came out. And I'm one of those people where I want to experience every experience to the fullest extent. So I was not going to leave that event without trying to scream. And it was a releasing and it was emotional. And that was the start of the personal development. Like that moment, hearing the pain of all of the women around me collectively completely changed my life because I was like, wow, I needed that. Other women need this. And not so much the release, but yes, the release, but it's the community and the working together and the support that we needed. So that was my start. And then I started going to more and more events like that and getting integrated into the communities of people who were having these really deep and hard conversations, which then, when you immerse yourself in that, my tolerance to surface level bullcrap went out the freaking window. I do not have any patience for it because I want to get deep. I want to have substance. I want to have real, genuine, true connection and talk about the real stuff. I do not want to talk about the weather. I don't want to talk about, oh, how are you? Because you don't really want to know unless you want to know. And then we'll talk about it.
Yeah, I think that's such a really powerful that's so powerful. Okay, so this happens a lot and it happens a lot in these spaces. And so a lot of people will go to these types of events where they have these really profound moments. And so they have like these big awakenings or they have these big insights and these big shedding. And then they go back to their everyday life and then they're trying to run their business, and then boom, 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 hit, hit, hit. And then a lot of times, like we're talking about as women, you are back in life as a mom, right? Your kid opens the door while you're in a podcast, right? Like those things happen. So, how did you integrate that? Like, what was that integration process like after a big moment?
Oh my gosh. Well, it's having the capacity and the ability to communicate what you've learned with those around you. So I came home from that event and I was emotionally changed. And my husband was like, what happened? Like, what actually happened here? Because you're different. And I'm like, I was different. And I tried to explain to him what had happened at that retreat and that event. And he was shocked. And from there, it was learning how to communicate what was coming up for me emotionally consistently. Because a lot of times we'll have all these feelings inside with our partners, with our friends, with our families, and we'll just work through them on our own. But then that is feeding that isolation and that's feeling that aloneness. And it's not building that genuine connection. So for me, I was really, really intentional with, okay, I want to have these conversations. So I made that very, very clear with the people that were around me of like, okay, I've done this. I want to invite you to come to these events so I can at least give the people who are close to me the chance to be involved and to feel and experience the same things because I'm growing. And if they don't want to grow with me, that's fine, but they can stay over there because I'm going to grow and I'm going to outgrow them. And that kind of comes full circle with the whole, raising your frequency and vibrations thing is, whenever you start elevating your life, you're going to be attracting people that are on that same level, that same frequency, that same vibration, business level, whatever it is, you're going to start elevating. And if the people around you don't want to come, then that's cool. It's just not meant for them, but you're not meant for them either at that point. And I think that we have to become okay with that and learn how to handle the grief that comes with the loss of those relationships and the loss of who you used to be. And I think that that's really huge.
When I yeah, and it's such a good point because I think that that's where and I think that's where some people get caught up and they get scared because they are so scared of that loss. They're so scared of going home and integrating what they learned and what they felt because it was so foreign to them. It was so out of character even or out of experience. They can't really identify with it. So taking that back home and integrating is really hard, especially with having conversations with people who may not understand, who may not be on the process of personal development or spiritual development or whatever. And so I think I would love to hear what that was like for you. How did you communicate? Because I know that's a question that people are going to be asking. Okay, that's great. I've had those experiences, but I'm still having a challenge with communicating this to my spouse or my significant other or my whoever in my life. So how did you actually communicate your needs with those around you?
Well, one big thing, my husband and I have this conversation consistently, is I would communicate, hey, I want to feel more connected. I'm trying to connect with you and have conversations, but I am not getting anything back. And oftentimes, the response would be, okay, well, I just don't have capacity for that right now. Like, I have my own job, I have my own work life like that, and I can't take on the burdens of your business, or I can't take on this emotional stuff that you have right now. And I told him, I said, okay, I love you and I hear that, but I need you to try. Like, I need you to try because I need support also. And really having those real conversations and saying, this is a non negotiable and we need to figure out how to make time to make this work. And how can we integrate this together rather than making this a me thing that I'm dragging you to, because this is not something that is just for fun. Like, this is something that can truly benefit other people and change their lives also. So I think that it's important of sharing how it's changed you, but also sharing the benefits of like, hey, let's do this together. This is going to bring us closer. We're going to connect. We're both going to grow and things are going to get easier. But another part of that is if you're communicating with somebody that isn't receptive to it. I have people like that in my life. My mom, she is my favorite person in the planet, but she is not an action taker. She has all of these ideas and she has all of these beliefs and these blocks that she tries to work through. And I try and say, come on, let's go, let's talk about this. I trying to help you and she's just not receptive to it. And it's really easy to be like, okay, well, they don't care about me. They don't want to have these conversations or they're judging me. That's not the case. They're working through stuff on their own. Okay. And we can't judge them for not feeling inclined or having the ability or maybe not even having the not the intelligence but the understanding or the ability to have these conversations, because if your mind is not open to it, you might simply just not know actually how to talk about it.
Yeah, absolutely. And you don't know how to deal with it, right? So that's something I talk about a lot is it's not personal, right? So whatever's
Right.
happening or whoever's talking to you or not talking to you or reacting to you, it's not personal. It's always about the other person and their journey,
Right.
right? And it always comes from this level of innocence. Like they might not know that there's an awareness or there's a shift that's happening or could happen.
Oh,
And the thing is sometimes we don't know that either, but we think we have this insight into what it is from these, experiences that we have, but that's what helps us shift into these different aspects. And I want to ask you about because this feeds right into it, when you talk about the outgrowing of other people, stepping out of maybe relationships or situations, because I'm dealing with that right now too. Is it's a big insight in my life that as my business and my life is really, it's got a lot of momentum right now and it's taking a lot of traction, and I'm looking around in my spaces, and although I love the spaces that I'm in, I'm recognizing the growth and I'm outgrowing those spaces, and it's time for me to step into a space where I am no longer the teacher and the challenger in the space, and I'm the one being taught and challenged.
yes.
And that's really uncomfortable, right? That's really uncomfortable for people because it's so familiar, and it's really easy to stay in that space where
Right.
I'm, you know, teaching and challenging all the time. That's my natural go-to. And so for you, what was that like to shed that and to let relationships go?
Oh my gosh. Everything you just said spoke so deeply to me. And it's something I talk about a lot. And I often get asked, MacKenzie, why don't you come to this networking event? MacKenzie, why don't you show up to this stuff? That's great. I love you and I love that for you, but I'm not going to go. And it's because of that exact reason of I need to be poured into as well. And there is, again, nothing wrong with going to networking events, supporting your local community, supporting your friends and doing those things and showing up to the coffee chats and doing all of that stuff. That is great. And you can do that from the kindness of your heart. But if we're going back to the it's not personal, it's just business, I need to spend my time in spaces doing things that are actually going to help me grow. And a lot of those times when we're in those spaces with the people that are maybe newer to the industry or who are not doing the deep work or who are not making those larger monetary commitments to get into the trainings and the courses and the programs and build the systems and the process and all of those things, we are simply just at different levels. And what's going to be talked about at the coffee chat and the networking event is not going to help me. And I need a different level of support. And that's exactly how I've dealt with it is I've stopped going. And, everyone can judge me all they want. And they can think that, oh, she thinks she's so good or she's too good to come to this, which is absolutely not the case. If anyone knows me and my heart and who I am, that's nowhere near who I am at all. But I also don't play. Like I play, but I do not play with my business. I do not play with my money. I do not play with my energy. And I do not play with my time. Like I just don't. And those are boundaries that as you excel through business, you have got to learn to maintain and separate. And a lot of times you might work with a friend who becomes a client and then there's a falling out that happens and then it gets really awkward and then your first were best friends and now you don't talk and I can maybe separate that, but sometimes you just can't and that's fine. But you just have to learn how to move on, because if you stay held down by the sadness and the grief of all of those things, it's not going to turn into anything good.
Yeah. And so have you always been like that? Right. So has that always been your go to where it's just like, this is what I'm doing and everybody else can kind of just jump on board or not? Or is that something that you had to learn and be able to integrate?
Mm, that's a deep question. As I reflect on it, I really think I've been that way. Like, for instance, completely unrelated to business, I had this boyfriend that I dated all through high school and through college. And then, we went and I gave him this hall pass and I thought I was going to win and he wasn't going to use it and this whole thing. And then he did. And then I was heartbroken. And, I was like, well, all right, that's it. Next. And just literally moved on in 3 days. Like, that's just how it is. I think, I don't know if maybe that's probably not healthy and it might be like a disassociation situation. I'm not super sure. But I do think I've always been that way in the sense of I want something and I am going to do what needs to be done to get it. It's reminding me of when I went to college. I went to Baylor and then I transferred to OU. But whenever I was at Baylor, it was my first year and I was an entrepreneurship major, and I came home. I was like, Mom, Dad, I'm dropping out of college. Like, I'm not going. I can make more money working this business. Fun fact, it was the one that the Davidson Industries wanted to work with me back when I was 12. I can make more money doing this, and if I'm not in college, like, I'm just gonna quit. And they're like, you're not gonna quit. And I was like, okay, well, we'll see about that. And I didn't quit, but I went and started multiple companies after that. But I've always been that way, I think.
Yeah, and I think that's a really powerful thing too. I think it's a learned skill, right? You can definitely learn it.
Yeah.
But it really comes into it's really hard for people pleasers to relate to what you're talking about, right? It's
Right.
so hard for people because I've always been like that too. I'm
Yeah.
very similar to you. We're very similar in this way where it's like, okay, well, if you don't like it, okay,
Yeah.
we're moving on. I'm moving on. You're coming with me or you're not. But I know the people pleasers that are listening to this are just
Yes.
like cringing inside.
Yep.
And so I would love for you just to give one piece of advice on that. Like if you're going to step into this really like just trusting yourself. That's what it is, right? Just to elaborate a little bit more, it's just a deep trust within yourself to know that it's going to work out. It's
Okay.
okay. You don't need to please everyone around you and get them on board. You know that you can do this. So if you were to give one piece of advice for people to step into this high level of just knowing, what would you tell them?
It would be to take fearless action. And I'm reminded of something that I heard about if you were to die today and you would go into some sort of montage, and the montage wasn't of your life as it was and all the precious moments that you experienced, but it was a montage of what your life would have looked like had you taken the action and done the thing that you wanted to do. And it gives me chills every time I talk about it. I remember the first time I heard that, it made me cry. And I used to cry every single time I talked about it. But that is my biggest fear. And that's why I always call my FOMO factor, my fear of missing out factor. I do not want to ever live in a life where I'm going to live in a state of regret from not doing something. And I think that for the people pleasers out there who might have an idea, or you might be scared to leave your friend group, or scared that you're going to be judged, or scared of failure, think about that. What if you tried? And what if you stayed where you are? Like, so much greatness is on the other end of it. Whether you succeed or if you fail, it does not matter, because either way, you are growing. No matter what, you make negative money, there is still growth in that.
Oh, that's freaking perfect. And it just feeds right into what you've already shared about your business failing and then you thriving now because that needed to happen so you can thrive in this situation and where what you're extremely good at. And really this momentum that you have and you're creating is just really, really powerful. And so I would love just for you to kind of share like I okay. So I want to go back to when what you just said about like the montage of what would happen if you didn't take the risk or do the things or take that messy action. And what are some of the most important key aspects you've done to be able to make that shift, to not cry when you think about that and think, oh shit, I'm doing it, I'm on the path that I want to be? What would you tell others? Like what would your advice be to them for them to be able to step into it how you did?
I think it's really truly being serious. Like, you have to be serious about the things that you want. If you say that you want the things that you want the life that you desire to have, you want the business to be the scale that you have to act in the ways that you would need to act in order for those things to be true. So, for instance, if you want a six-figure business, you've got to act in the ways of a six-figure business owner. That doesn't mean go drop $1 million building out a process, because that's not feasible and we understand that. But are you disciplined? Do you have a schedule? Do you have a routine? Are you doing it all by yourself, or have you maybe found someone for $10 to $30 an hour to help you do some of the things? Because a six-figure business owner is not going to be doing it on their own. They can't, in order to operate at the highest version of yourself and that level of efficiency and that scale. And if we're going to relate it to something a little bit more real life and personal and kind of outside of business, I had a moment where it's so defining of me. And it's about a time where I was at a rave. And it was a 90s themed rave. And I remember they were all dancing, we were all having a great time, and the DJ started playing Pop Lock and Drop It. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is my jam. Like, I love this. And they started inviting people up on stage. And I was like, oh my God, I want to go up on stage. But I am so scared. Like, I am so scared to do this. And I said it out loud. And finally, by the time that I like got the nerve to go and do it, the DJ changed the song. And that feeling of regret and disappointment that came over me was so deep. And to be sitting in that feeling at a rave where everyone's like having a bomb ass time and I'm sitting there like pouting, like that was just not a good feeling. That was not the vibe. And what happened after that was they started playing the song called Crank That Soldier Boy, which is my jam. And I was like, oh my God, this is my redemption moment. Like, truly, this is it. So I gave my phone to my friends and I sprinted up on stage and I cranked that Soldier Boy in front of 500 people. And whenever I tell the story, they think that me making the decision to go and do that on stage was what got me on stage. And that's not what it was. And finally getting to this point where I can have the emotional intelligence to understand the actual thing that got me onto the stage was what helps me make decisions now. And the thing that got me on the stage was that feeling of regret and disappointment and realizing that I let fear steal that moment from me. I let fear of being judged, fear of people thinking I was crazy. Who does she think she is getting up on stage? Oh my God, she looks like that? Why would she even get up on stage like that? All of those fears were what were stopping me from going and having this really awesome, super fun experience. And what I had told myself in the hallway before I got on stage is that if I really want to impact people and speak on stages and have a company with a reach as big as Coke and change lives, I have to be able to get up on the stage and crank that Soldier Boy right now. Like, it doesn't have to be that serious. And this is such a silly and fun story, but it was deeply profound. And it truly did change my life because that was a moment where I made the choice to embody that highest version of myself, to get up on stage, release that fear of judgment, and embody that version of myself that I say that I wanted.
I don't think there's any better way to share that. And I think that it's so important too, because we oftentimes think that I love how you just made that parallel from like a random ass experience to
Yeah.
what you need to do in your business, because I always like to say that life is your meditation,
Yeah.
right? That's what, like, life is your practice. And so when you're going through life in this way and you're seeing all these moments and you're following your intuition and you're looking for what it's showing you, it will always show you what you need to see
Yeah.
and what you need to work on. Then you can integrate that in all these different areas. So it's not just about getting on stage, or it is also, it's about getting on different stages of
Right.
life, right? Like, how else are you going to be showing up in your business and in your life and in your relationships and all these different areas? And I think that's a really powerful thing. Is one, it's not worrying. One big thing I know about you is, and it can just also just be the external expression, but it's not worrying about what other people think about you.
Right.
It's worrying about what you think about you and how that regret's going to keep gnawing at you as you move forward.
Right.
And so I love that if I was to wrap it up with that one lesson right there, it's to not worry about what other people think about you, and it's to worry about what you think about you, because
Right.
that's who you have to live with,
Right.
right? And 30, 50, 60 years from now, you're the one living with yourself. You're not living with Jane or Sue and their businesses and what they think about you.
Right.
You have to be able to look back and say, I did what I needed to do. I did that work. And so if you were going to encourage those listening to do something to help with their inner emotional world, what would you tell them to do?
You have to be honest, like Kayla always talks about, but you can't be afraid of what comes up. And one thing that I do, and I do this in public, and people think I'm psychotic, and I don't really care because I also have a purpose and a reason for doing it. But I will sit, and if I'm having a feeling, like, for instance, that same night at the rave, I decided to stay and my friends decided to leave. And I wanted to stay and enjoy myself. And I was not ready to go home. So I went to the Connected Bar and I went and sat in a 4-person booth by myself and just swaying and dancing and having a great time all by my damn self. And I was having feelings of, oh my God, these people at this bar are probably looking at me like, is she okay? Like, why is she alone? Like, why does she think she needs to sit in this booth by herself? Like, other people need to be sitting down. But if we're being real with ourselves, that is just our inner critic. That is judgment. That is ego. That is all of those negative things that keep us stagnant, gnawing at you and testing you. Because if we're being real, those people at the bar, one, they're not looking at me. It is not about me at all. They are in their own conversation. Two, the bar was empty. Like, there are other seats. If I was really bothering people and someone really needed the seat, they would have said something. Like, all of those things that came up for me were not true. So I will literally sit and record myself on video and talk to myself and say, okay, I am feeling like these people are really looking at me right now, and I know that they're not, and I will talk myself through the situation. And I am always doing this, and yes, it can be exhausting, but to me, I love it. Like, I want to be growing and developing, and that's part of wanting to have those deep, authentic, genuine connections with people. But I have that with myself. Like, if nobody wants to sit and talk to me about that, I can talk to me. Like, I can talk to me, and at the end of the day, it's about our relationships with ourselves. And and that's that. Like, you just have to learn how to live with yourself, because truly, my husband can up and leave me. My kids are gonna up and be grown. They're gonna have their own families. I've got me, myself, and my business, and maybe I will have my business one day. Maybe I'll up and sell it and be living on my lake house on the island. Like, who knows what it is? But if you are not happy and content with yourself, then you are never going to be happy. You are not going to reach the levels that you want to be, and you're never going to be content, because you're always going to be feeling like there's something more. And if you can't be honest with yourself about the things that are happening inside your body, you're not going to be able to get through it either.
Yes, absolutely. And I it's so important because that conversation always comes back to the relationship with yourself. It always does. It comes back to trusting yourself. It comes back to trusting your intuition and your ability to make decisions for yourself and your business. Because, like you said, everything is impermanent, right? We're impermanent, but our relationships around us are impermanent. Things change. So they may not drop off completely, but they will change. And until we get deeply connected with ourselves, it will keep showing up and interrupting our ability to show up fully in our business, which is why this work is so important. Because if we don't do this deep inner work, we stay in the same cycles, we stay in the same pond, right? We don't outgrow the pond that we're in. We don't outgrow the rooms we're in, because we're in the same cycles and we're getting caught up with other people's shit.
Right.
And so until we look at what our insecurities are, we're going to keep falling into that trap of other people. So it's a really powerful process. And you're such an amazing example of that. That's why I was so glad to have you on as my first guest on this podcast, because I just think that your story is so powerful. The way that you present yourself is so amazing. And of course, I just love the work you do. And so I would love for you to be able to share a little bit about an offer you have or something that you want to offer the audience listening right now.
So the way that people can work with me is I do offer ways to work with me one-on-one, whether that's being like your strategic partner and kind of helping you ideate everything inside of your business. So if you have this big idea and maybe you just don't know how to get there, I am the person that can be your navigator to help you build that roadmap, kind of like Candyland, to kind of get you to where you want to go. But for me, a lot of times it's not just about the strategy. You can have all the strategy that you want, but if you don't have the time, energy, knowledge, or capacity to actually implement anything, it doesn't matter how much strategy you have, you're probably going to stay where you are. So I love to offer operations and implementation support as well with that on different hourly containers, so that we can actually implement the things that we talk about and your businesses can actually grow and scale. So with that, you can work with me one-on-one just to be that ideator, that strategic partner for you, or you can book me to help you with the strategy and the implementation. And then coming up in 2025, I'm going to be having a membership open up, which I'm so excited about. And I joined a massive program today with one of the greatest community builders and membership builders in the industry right now, and it was so scary, but I again am so excited, and I just know that it's going to translate so well for my community, being able to help a lot of other people. So I'm really, really excited about that. And then the last way to kind of connect with me is just to follow me on socials, on Instagram and Facebook, and join my email list. That's probably the best place to hang out with me. On my socials, you're just going to see a lot of me being me. You're not going to see a lot of business stuff and whatever. It's just not who I am. I'm not the world's best person at sharing that. If you want access to my strategic business mind, then we can work together one on one. That's really where I thrive, and where my heart is working with other people intimately in that way. But if you want to come have a dance party with me online and watch me cook and hang out with my kids and bake some bread, then you can find me on socials. And then other than that, I'm going to be having a big event in 2025 called Take the Stage. So I'm really excited about that as well.
Oh my gosh, you have so many things in the works and they're all going to be amazing. I just know it. So definitely reach out to MacKenzie for all of your strategy needs. I cannot express enough just how absolutely fantastic she is. And I just really appreciate you being here and being open and vulnerable, because when we talk about emotional healing, it is vulnerable. It is a lot for us to process and to understand. Also, I think it's really important for us to share these stories so people can see the connection between what's holding them back in their business and what can truly open up and expand. So that is our episode today. Thank you so much for listening to the Emotional Revolution, and I can't wait to see you next week.